In this calculator tutorial, I'm going to show you how to enter a data set into the calculator and then how to find one variable statistics from that data set. Now, when I say one variable statistics, that will cover the mean, the median, standard deviation, the quartiles, and the minimum and the maximum. So a lot of information there. Okay, so let's get started. So I have a data set here from the notes, which is the number of pets that each student had. There are a bunch of them there. And of course, if you're in a different class, you'll have a different data set. That's fine. So you press Stat, because the name of the course is Statistics, right? And then we're going to edit. So number 1, edit. So press 1. And I have, well, actually the correct data set, but I'm going to pretend it's an old data set that I don't want anymore. So when you have an old data set that you don't want anymore, you press up. So you move up to the top. So you're highlighting the entire column. And you press Clear, Enter, and then it's gone. And you should have list 1, list 2, list 3, list 4, list 5, and so on. The L stands for list. All right, so then you're going to enter your data. So for example, 1 enter is the first data point. And let me go back to the data set for just a second so I can see. 1, 3, 1, 0. Okay, so I would go 1 enter, 3 enter, 1 enter, 0 enter, and so on. And you keep doing that until you filled out the entire data set. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be right back with the column all filled out. So you can pause me and fill it out yourself as well. Oops, just in case you need it. Here's the data set. So you can pause right there and fill it out. There we go. I have the data set filled out. And let me bring back the screen so you can see it. But you can tell that at the very bottom, I'm sitting there at blank number 33. So as you're typing in, it will tell you actually which one you're typing in. So for example, this was slot number 32. This was slot number 31. So if you're fortunate enough to have your data set numbered the way this one was, you know which one should be 32 and 31 and so on. So it's just another way to double check that you did it correctly. All right, so then I want to do a couple things. I want to show you a couple things. So one thing I want to show you is how to find one variable stat. So that's the first thing. So we'll press Stat, and you're going to move to the right to Calculate, and it's number 1 right there, one variable stat. Now you can either press Enter because it's already highlighted, or you can just press 1. These numbers down here in this menu system are hotkeyed. That means if I press 4 right this second, it's going to hop to linear regression. If I press 5, it'll hop to quadratic regression, and so on. So I want number 1, so I'm going to press number 1. And then you should have this menu system if you are working with a TI-84. If you do not have this menu system, you need to talk to your instructor about upgrading it, or connect your calculator to your computer and then go to the TI website and download the newest operating system and get that running. So here we have the list and the frequency list and calculate. So the list is where you put the data, the raw data, which is an L1. The frequency list we don't have at this stage. That'll come later in this chapter when you have, 5 number 1s and 6 number 2s and things like that. So we'll deal with that more in another section. So we only want the list one, and we want to leave frequency list blank for right now. So if it's not blank, you press clear and make it blank. Oh, and oops, I just pressed the wrong button. That's okay. You can get back. So press Stat, move to the right to calculate, number 1 or enter, either way. If this wasn't L1, let me just say, if this was L3, for example, and you don't want L3, then what you do is press second right here, and then number 1, and shift 1, if you will. And shift 1 will get you L1, and then you can move down with your down arrow, down again to calculate, and press enter. And it will run one variable stats. And in this one variable stats will be all sorts of information. So up here is the mu, or the X bar, depending on whether your data set was a population or a sample. Our particular data set was a sample, so it was actually an X bar. And these two numbers we can kind of ignore. This one's the sum of all the data if you want, and this is the sum of all the data squared. It's not really relevant for us. Sx is the sample standard deviation. Sigma x is the population standard deviation. Of course, one's if the data was a sample, the other one's if the data was a population. Those calculations are different, so the calculator gives you both of them, and you have to know which one was correct. So our particular data set was a sample, so we would definitely be using the sample standard deviation S. Okay? N was how many data points there were. There were 32 in there. The min was 0. The Q1, that's the first quartile, that's 1. The median is 2. The third quartile right there is 3. And the max is 9. That's the highest. So it gives you a lot of information in one little output. The one thing it doesn't give you in here is the mode. So if you ever want to find the mode, you can either kind of look at the data set, but you can also help yourself a little bit. Let me go back to stat for a second. Suppose I want to sort my data set, because if you remember, it's kind of jumbled. So I want to sort A is ascending, like climbing, going up. Sort D is descending, going down, right, from high to low. So either one of these will work. Let's say I want to sort ascending L1. So my second one, close my parentheses, enter. And it's going to say done. So now if I go back to stat edit, stat 1, or stat enter, either way, you can see that my data set has turned from this jumbled mess where everything was kind of all over to being sorted out. There are 3 zeros, and I could count the ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 11. There were 11 ones. And then I could count the 2s. It's still not perfect, it's not great, but at least because it's sorted, it makes it a little bit easier for me to figure out what the mode is. So there you go. Now, if you want to get out of here, if you're ever in this screen and you want to get out of it, you press second mode, which quits and gets you out of that screen and back to the home screen. One other thing real quickly, if you find the stat variable, go down to calculate, enter. When you find this data set, it gives you SX and sigma X, which are standard deviation. But suppose you wanted the variance. Well, to do that, you would square whichever one you have. So in this case, it was a sample, so I would square the standard deviation 2.0546 and so on. If it was a population, I'd square 2.022. Now you can do that by just typing 2.05469 and press the squared button over here on the left. Fine. But you got to remember how many decimal places you wanted and such. But there is another way. So let me press the VARS button right here. And then do you see number 5 down there? Statistics. Name of the course might be useful, so let me grab that. And I can press enter because I've already moved to it, or I can press 5. And then see right there, number 3, right there? That's the standard deviation that you last ran. So if I press enter, it actually knows all the decimal places. So if I press variables, number 5, which is statistics, number 3, which is SX, and I square it, enter, it'll actually square all those decimal places without me having to type them. So it takes a little minute to learn it, but it actually can be really useful to not have to type everything under the sun. So rather than me trying to remember 2.05469, oops, and see that wasn't even right there because I didn't know where the 9 went to, so it should have been higher than that. By using the SX feature, I don't even have to bother. Now what if it was sigma X? Well, I could do that, variables, number 5 again, and then use 4 this time because 4 is sigma X. You can move down to it with your down arrow. Once it's dark, you can press enter and then square it, enter. And there would be the population variance. So this 4.22177 is the sample variance, 4.0898 is the population variance. Which one's appropriate for your data set depends on what your data set is. In our case, it was a sample, so we would use the 4.22177. And while we're on the subject, you can also use this to find the range. Not that the range is a difficult thing to find anyway, but you can press variables, number 5, and if you kind of look down, see number 9, that's the max, and number 8 is the min. So you can say 9, which is the max, minus variables, number 5 for statistics, and then I could take the min, which is number 8, and it'll say max minus min. I don't need to see them on the screen. The calculator has them stored. But keep in mind, it only has stored the last time you ran it. So if you put in a new data set in stat edit, if you go in here, clear out this old data set and type in a new one, but you don't run the one variable stats under here, then it won't know it. It only knows the last time that you ran one variable stats. It stores that in its short-term memory. One other thing, if you want to find the IQR, you can do the same thing. Variables, number 5, and then I'll go down with my down arrow. Min Y, oops, it's not in there. Let's see here. Nope, it's not there. There they are, PTS points. So there's the median right there. There's Q3 right there, and there's Q1. I knew they were in here somewhere. All right, so I could say 9, which is Q3, minus, and then I can go back, variables, statistics, which is number 5. Then I'm going to go left because I know it's the PTS one, the points one. And then I'm going to hit Q1, which is 7. Enter. And there's my IQR right there. Nice, huh? And of course, these particular ones were so simple. If you remember stat, calc, one variable, these particular ones were so simple because the numbers were so easy. I mean, if you look at Q3 and Q1, that's a very simple subtraction to do, 3 minus 1. Similarly, the range is 9 minus 0. That's easy. But the variance thing is kind of nice because standard deviation always has a lot of decimal places. Matter of fact, it has infinitely many decimal places. So the calculator rounds to like 10. You don't want to have to memorize all 10 numbers before you go type them to square them. And the stat feature, the variables 5, statistics, these guys right in here, mean you don't have to memorize them. You can actually just use this to square them and find the variance. All right, that was a really rich video because it has pretty much everything you need for well, not everything, but a lot of what you need for chapter 3. Don't forget, stat edit, edits your data. Go up and press clear if you need to get the data set cleared. Type in your data and then press stat, move to the right to calculate, and press number 1. Go down to calculate and press enter. And if you don't see that menu when you go to do that, talk to your instructor about upgrading your calculator. I'll see you back here for more tutorials.